Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. I am back and we are continuing with the Indie Classics series. For the penultimate episode, I'll be talking about the Mercury Prize winning record from Wolf Alice, Visions of a Life, released in 2017. And before we get into the episode, if you enjoy music deep dives like this, please consider following the podcast or leaving a like depending on where you're listening. It really helps the show reach more people, and it means a lot for a small independent podcast like this one. Visions of a Life is the second studio album by English alternative and indie rock band Wolf Alice. It was released on the 29th of September 2017 through Dirty Hit. It was the follow-up to their 2015 debut My Love Is Cool, and the record was produced by Justin Meldal Johnson. The record received widespread critical acclaim and appeared on many year-end lists with various publications such as The Enemy and Q. The record also won the 2018 Mercury Prize, and something which is also equally impressive is that Wolf Alice have also been nominated for the Mercury Prize for the rest of their discography. 3 nominations and 1 win for a prestigious accolade like the Mercury Prize just shows the strength of this band and their songwriting. I said in my review of The Clearing that Wolf Alice is the best British band around right now. They are constantly evolving, and as a fan, it's been incredible seeing them grow into the band that they are right now. I won't be covering in this episode how I discovered Wolf Alice, so if you are curious and want to know more, please check out my previous episode covering the Blue Weekend record. I go into detail how I became a fan and how much they mean to me, so please give that a listen after this episode is finished. Wolf Alice really knocked it out of the park with Visions of a Life. There is no sophomore slump going on here. They took the foundations of their debut, but elevated their sound even further. They cover a variety of different genres, such as dream pop and shoegaze, and incorporate electronica and synth pop into their trademark indie sound. They still have their loud, heavy moments with the lead single, Yuck Fu, but over the 12 tracks, this record is so sonically diverse with some interesting production. Each track is so different from each other, but at the same time, the band also delivered a record that is concise and cohesive, and that is really difficult to pull off. Wolf Alice just has the knack and the confidence to pull things off with ease. They really trust their instincts and are able to experiment with so many different genres. They aren't afraid to go in a different direction or try new sounds. Ellie is one of my favourite vocalists. I talked about in the Blue Weekend and the Clearing episodes how she is able to use and push her voice, almost like an instrument in some ways. She sounded fantastic on the debut, but there is something otherworldly about her vocal performances on Visions of a Life. We have reached the penultimate episode of my current series, the Indie Classics. And I did consider including My Love Is Cool, and I was going back and forth for the longest time trying to decide, as I can only cover one record at a time. Visions has the slight edge, probably due to the Mercury Prize win. I received a comment about the last episode in the series from last week when I discussed Futurology by the Manic Street Preachers. The person who left a comment didn't think that a record from 2014 kind of qualifies to be called a classic. And I absolutely get that. Visions of a Life was released back in 2017, and obviously it's nearly 10 years old now. Like Futurology, both records have the lasting impact and longevity to be called a classic. These are timeless indie records that have gotten better with age, and every record covered in this series shares that same quality. Going back to revisit these records in preparation for the episodes have made me realise that they still sound fresh, exciting, and not dated in the slightest. Visions of a Life contains an absolute beast of a track run, tracks 1 to 7 in particular, and I will go into detail shortly. But can you name another indie record with such a strong run like this? To me, that is good enough to be called a classic. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, Heavenward. You really couldn't imagine this record opening up any other way. Wolf Alice delivers an epic here, and they really take their time. They let the instrumental breathe and fully develop. It's got hints of shoegaze, dream pop, indie, and rock, all driven by Ellie's fantastic vocal performance. The production is really interesting. When I was listening back on headphones, it feels like parts of the song are louder than others, and there are moments when Ali's voice sounds clearer, and then she becomes nearly drowned out in the instrumental. It's a really interesting detail, and it keeps you hooked. You never quite know what they're going to do next. The lyrics are about the death of a friend, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to the message of this song, especially if you've lost a loved one. Verse 2 really hits home for me personally, and it makes me think of losing my own mum. Ellie sings, "I'm going to celebrate you forever. You taught us things we all should learn. Yeah, I'm going to celebrate you forever and long to see you when it's my turn." God damn, that's just so profound and beautiful, and I relate to every single word. The instrumental and production have that ethereal vibe running throughout. There are some heavy moments, but Wolf Alice know when to pull back and not let it fully take over. It's powerful, uplifting, and spiritual. And what a statement to kick off the record, all carried by Ellie's stunning vocal delivery. Track 2, Yuck Fu. So here we have the lead single for this album campaign, and I would say if you're listening to this record for the first time, it feels like a bit of whiplash following on from the previous track. Yuck Fu is short, snappy, loud, brash, and unapologetically direct. This is the punk rock side of Wolf Alice that makes an appearance now and again. And when they go in this direction, it's always so fresh and full of energy. Of course, it's not meant to be taken seriously at all. Wolf Alice are really having some fun here. And if you've seen them live, then you know the energy that they bring while performing this. This track has helped me so much whenever I'm feeling low and I need some of that fierce female attitude that Ellie brings. She opens up the song with, Am I a bitch to not like you anymore? Punch me in my face, I wouldn't even fight you no more. And then leading into the chorus of, 'cause you bore me to death. Well, deplore me. No, I don't give a shit. It's just full of this don't mess with me attitude, which I am here for. The production is messy and abrasive, and how they manage to pack in so much into the brief running time is astounding. You feel like you could take on the world after listening to this track. It just has that insane fuck you energy. Anybody who has bullied you, betrayed you, or cheated on you, this song is for them. It's a highlight for me and one of my favourite Wolf Alice tracks. I will never tire of hearing this. Track 3, Beautifully Unconventional. This was released as a third single, and I didn't realise that the duration of this track is 1 second less than Yuck Fu. It certainly doesn't feel short or unfinished. It's still fully fleshed out with a lot going on in the production and instrumental. It's driven by that guitar line, which pushes the song forward alongside the drums and bass. And you would think, how can they follow up Yuck Fu? But this track follows on perfectly. I talk a lot about track placement on the podcast and how it can make or break an album, and I feel that Wolf Alice really understands the importance of this on their records. Given how diverse they are, it feels like they take their time with the structure of their albums and give the listener the full album experience. Lyrically, the song's inspiration is the cult 1989 film Heathers. The lyrics are from the perspective of the character JD, who was played by Christian Slater in the film. Sonically, it's quite straightforward with an indie pop edge. The production is quite dry, and Ellie's vocals are very front and centre, with hardly any reverb, which is a refreshing change on an album that is quite reliant on atmosphere and a fuller production. I promise you will not get the chorus out of your head for days. It is a true earworm. Track 4, Don't Delete the Kisses. This was released as the second single, and I am sure that a lot of people will have heard this. Again, this is a complete sonic departure compared to the previous 3 tracks. This time, Wolf Alice bring out the synths and atmosphere, and the result is breathtaking. Ellie sounds almost childlike when her vocals come in during the intro. Her voice is layered with a shit ton of reverb and it just sounds gorgeous. I love synths, electronica, and atmospheric production. It's something that I am naturally drawn to. And when Wolf Alice go in this direction, it just suits them so well. It's uplifting and euphoric with the sing-along chorus, but it's also dreamy and quite haunting in the spoken word verses by Ellie. Is it dream pop? Is it shoegaze? Or is it synth pop? What Wolf Alice executes so brilliantly with this track is that feeling of being in love. That dreaminess and the sense of euphoria in the production is just a total masterclass by Justin. The lyrics and Ellie's delivery are why this track works in the way that it does. It feels like she is just rambling all her thoughts about this person, like it's a diary entry or reading her notes app on her phone. The spoken word delivery is genius because It's like the listener is hearing Ellie's own thoughts in her head. It's intimate and it's full of little details in the verses. Ellie's ramblings finally give way to the chorus, which just feels like a total release and confirmation to her and the listener that she is fully in love with this person. It's so hazy and dreamy. It makes you feel like you are floating and you just don't want it to end. It's probably no surprise that this track is one of the album's highlights for me. It captures the essence of falling in love and being in love so perfectly, without it heading into soppy territory. It's one of the best indie pop songs ever written. Track 5, Planet Hunter. And talking of perfect songs, here we have Planet Hunter, another one of my favourites from the record. The sonics and soundscape of this track are absolute perfection. Ellie's vocals are so dreamy, and when she is drenched in reverb like this with those backing vocals, all wrapped up in those synths and atmospheric production, it just sounds incredible. And I love how the song builds with the guitars and drums. It's such a satisfying moment on the record. And what is amazing when you are going through all these tracks is that you never know what direction the band are going to go in next. I would give anything to rediscover this record all over again and have that first listen. The lyrics, which I read that Ellie wrote one New Year's Eve, seem to be looking back with a bit of self reflection. She said that the song is about the feeling when you never want to go to bed and don't want the night to end. The I left my mind behind in 2015 line could be about the breakthrough the band experienced in that year. Their debut was released in 2015 and received their first Mercury Prize nomination. I think this song reflects the impact of that time, an exciting moment for a new band, but it also comes with the self-doubt and that question of whether the success is going to last. And that shoegaze outro is fucking perfection. Track 6, Sky Musings. Ellie is getting lost in her thoughts again, and this track is another highlight for me from the record. I would say that Sky Musings is the flip side to Don't Delete the Kisses. Ellie approaches this track with a spoken word delivery again, but this time is more manic and she captures the feeling of anxiety perfectly, being stuck 40,000 feet in the sky. The instrumental captures Ellie's panic and frantic lyrics. It feels claustrophobic and you feel every emotion that Ellie is feeling. Like Don't Delete the Kisses, Ellie is rambling and you get inside her head again. This is so much more powerful. It's just line after line of Ellie's disturbing thoughts and feelings. And to me, it reads like an unstructured poem. It's absolute genius in the way that this track is delivered. All four band members are on top of their game here with some truly outstanding production. In verse 2, Ellie delivers the lines. And now I think of all the people I've cared for. Did love pass me by when I had feelings I was scared of? 'Cause I feel so when I should feel. I feel so when I should feel. Ellie's stream of consciousness and the fact that she can't put into words how she is feeling at that exact moment is one of my favourite moments on the record. And When you think, can this song get any better? Well, verse 3 comes along and Ellie delivers some really dark shit here. 23 years old and you're acting like it's over. Only over if we crash. Hit the ground below us. If we crash. If we crash. Imagine that. If we crash. Holy shit. The anxiety and the spiraling are really starting to take over Ellie at this point. What is dark is that she is implying some comfort with if we crash. The repetition is like Ellie saying, well, if that happens, I'm okay with that. I'm at peace. There is some incredibly strong songwriting here. It is no surprise that the band took home the Mercury Prize with this record when you have tracks like this to unpack. Ellie becomes more unhinged throughout verse 4 and 5 and even admits, I'm sorry, I lost myself for a minute. Could I have a glass of water? And then that bridge arrives. Those synths, Jesus Christ. It's like the gates of heaven has opened up. Ellie whispers, God, is that you? It's like she has found the answers in that moment and all of the anxiety and fear has been diminished as she repeats new phase on the outro. The repetition, like a mantra, is Ellie breaking free as the song is drawing to a close. Will this new phase last forever? Well, I think that is open to interpretation, but the way this track builds to that heavenly bridge never fails to give me goosebumps. The song is a dream pop shoegaze masterpiece in every way, and I could easily have another 10 minutes of this track. Track 7, Formidable Cool. So I mentioned in my introduction to this episode that the track run from 1 to 7 is an absolute beast. And if you are familiar with this record, then I hope you can understand what I mean. This track is another highlight for me. And if you have experienced this live, then you will know how wild it gets. It's more stripped back with the instrumental and has a real live band feel, which really works. It sounds like they are jamming in the studio, but this track is all about Ellie's vocals and the drums from Joel. Ellie switches from soft to a quite menacing tone to full on yelling as the song progresses. I've talked about this on my previous 2 episodes covering Wolf Alice, and I will never stop praising her. She really gives you variety and she packs in so much emotion and character. Ellie has said that this track is inspired by the novel The Girls, written by Emma Cline. The novel is about a young teenager who gets involved with a Charles Manson-like cult. The lyrics are quite direct and blunt, and I have not read the novel, but I can imagine that with the subject matter, it would be quite dark, and it's something that I am interested in reading. If you are listening and have read this novel, please let me know your thoughts. This track really becomes alive during their live performances, especially when Ellie screams, and he gives you satisfaction in whatever form he likes, to heal the wounds you have and not to open any more. But that's all he fucking did when he fucked you on the floor. This moment was truly spine-tingling when we saw Wolf Alice last September during their album launch for The Clearing in Liverpool. I have posted this clip on my social media and it was truly incredible. Track 8, Space and Time. I know I said about the amazing track run from 1 to 7, but that doesn't mean that the last 5 tracks are duffers. This is Wolf Alice we are talking about, and the quality continues. Ellie has confirmed that the song is about feeling anxious and trying not to feel anxious. I can relate to what Ali is saying in the song, and I am sure there will be a lot of people out there who will be able to connect. Anxiety is so soul destroying and draining. It really takes it out of you. It punishes you, kicks your arse, and makes an appearance during the most inconvenient times. It likes playing games with you, trying to beat you at every available opportunity. This is my experience of living with anxiety, and I get what Ellie is saying. You have the feelings of anxiety, and you try to block it out so it doesn't beat you, but it comes at you even harder when you're trying to keep it under control. Ellie sings in the chorus about hoping her body gets better, questioning whether she means her body or her mind, and needing time, space, and time. I think the production and chaotic nature of the instrumental act as a metaphor for Ali's anxiety, which is really clever songwriting. It's so true, so accurate in every way. And there are certain artists I turn to when I'm feeling anxiety, and Wolf Alice are one of them. I'm so grateful for their music and how much they have helped me when I have felt low and anxious. And if you are listening and are struggling, then I hope you find some comfort in the podcast and your favourite music. Track 9, Sad Boy. So, this track took a while to fully click with me, and I'm not sure why. Sometimes that happens with records. There can be one track that you need more time with, and that is completely okay. The strength of this track for me has well and truly come through now. And I think the magic happens in the second half of the track. There is a lot going on here in the production, and it starts to feel more chaotic and intense as it builds. Ellie screaming during the outro, and she sounds completely drowned out by the instrumental, and it almost feels overwhelming in the best way. It's quite experimental as well, with the vocal manipulation and the harsher arrangement, which makes it stand out from the rest of the record. It was the sixth single from the record, and to have this many singles from one album just shows the strength of the tracks. It really is all killer, no filler. Track 10, Saint Purple and Green. Goddamn, Ellie's vocals on the intro are spine tingling. To keep the quality going this far into the record is so impressive. You can tell that the band were absolutely going for it on this album. And I want to take this moment to also credit the rest of the guys in the band because their craft in musicianship on this record is truly off the scale. Ellie confirmed that this track was written about her nana, who unfortunately developed dementia. She explained that her nana would sing a song called Purple and Green, which really resonated with her. I can imagine this was probably very emotional for Ellie to record, and I think this track displays some of her strongest vocals. It's absolutely breathtaking, and what a beautiful tribute to Ellie's nana. The image on the artwork for the record is Ellie's aunt playing a game as a child, which involved dancing around the skull of a horse. She explained that it ties in with the album title and the personal nature of the artwork, and this track in particular really makes a powerful statement. The outro of this track is one of my favourite moments on the entire record. Ellie's vocals, drenched in reverb, almost Elizabeth Fraser-esque in tone and delivery. I will always be amazed at what this woman can do with her voice. She can be angry, she can be confrontational, she can be emotional, and she can also deliver a softer vocal, and she can also push her voice like an instrument. When I was preparing for this episode, I just played the outro of this track on repeat because I wanted to hear those vocals again and again. Track 11, After the 0 Hour. If you heard my review of The Clearing last year, then I mentioned that during Midnight Song that I got vibes from this track. Both share the same haunting production and acoustic guitar, and it's nice to get a softer track to switch things up. It really works as the penultimate track sonically. Again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how important the placement of the track list is. Lyrically, I'm a bit confused as to what it's actually about. I have made a connection with certain lines in the track that I would like to share, and I would love to know what my listeners think and how you interpret this song. There are a few references to Lana Del Rey scattered in the lyrics. The "but this girl refused to die" line could be a Born to Die loose reference. I know I'm reaching a bit here. The last chorus also makes me think of Lana with the "so this girl refused to cry" line, which could reference Lana's Pretty When You Cry from Ultraviolence. Then Ellie sings, "but embrace her lust for life," which makes me think of Lana's Lust for Life, which was also released in 2017. It could all be a coincidence, of course, as Lana and Wolf Alice were probably working on the records roughly around the same time during 2016 going into 2017. But I did read during their Blue Weekend era that the band were influenced by Ultraviolence and the production of that record. Of course, I'm just clutching at straws here, but it's a nice connection to make. Track 12, Visions of a Life. We have finally made it to the end of the record, and the title track is an absolute epic. Clocking in at nearly 8 minutes, this is ambitious, perfectly executed, and really shows the band's craft and musicianship. Structurally, it's broken up into 3 parts, and I would say that it's quite experimental and unexpected. You really can't predict where this song is going, but it's a vibe and a journey. They really give you the perfect send-off to this record, but at the same time, you can't help but to just sit back and take all the twists and turns in. I love how Wolf Alice really push themselves sonically and production-wise. There are so many layers, textures, and atmosphere, and to be honest, I really can't do this track justice just by talking about it. It's something that you have to experience with a good pair of headphones. So that was Visions of a Life by Wolf Alice, and what a record this is. Critically acclaimed across the board, featuring heavily on year-end lists, and rightfully so, taking home the Mercury Prize in 2018. And when you look at the shortlist that year, it makes that win even more impressive. And for me, this completely avoids any kind of sophomore slump. If anything, they have elevated everything that made their debut so special. This record is more experimental, more ambitious, and sonically it's a bit messy at times, but that's what makes it so exciting. With so many different styles and influences across the 12 tracks, from heavier moments to dreamy atmospheric passages, Wolf Alice somehow managed to pull it all together into one cohesive album. That is not easy to do, and they absolutely nailed it here. It feels like a band really pushing themselves and not playing it safe. And you can hear that confidence in every single track. There's so much variety, but it never feels disjointed. It all belongs together. For me, this is a modern indie classic. It captures so many different emotions, sounds, and moments. And it's a record that I keep coming back to time and time again. And honestly, I think Visions of a Life will still be talked about and referenced for many years to come. And that, to me, is what makes a modern indie classic. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like, or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. It really helps the algorithm push the video out to more people. And as a small independent podcast that's still growing, every like and subscription genuinely makes a huge difference. I'm posting full episodes, shorts, and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love Wolf Alice and if Visions of a Life is your favourite album from them. I always read and respond to comments, and I love hearing what you all think. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl, and on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. I'll be back very soon, and I'll be closing out the Indie Classic series with a record from 2014, which has become one of my favourite albums of all time. A little clue, I've already talked about this band on my podcast, and I can't wait to bring this episode to you. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.